Welcome to my video on flying your DJI Inspire 1 for the very first time. Now, I've been flying this aircraft for a little over 2 years now, and when I started flying it, I wish I would have had a video like the one that I'm creating for you now. Just a step-by-step instruction kind of video on how to get up and running in the quickest amount of time possible. So before I even consider going out and flying anywhere, I make sure that the weather is going to allow me to do that. And if you are going to fly for the very first time, I highly recommend that you fly in an empty space like a field or something like that, because trees will reach out and grab your drone when you're not expecting it. The first thing that I do on every single flight is check an app called Before You Fly, and this is made by the FAA to kind of give you an idea if you are in a legal airspace to where you can deploy your drone. I check this app before every flight, every single time, to make sure that I am in compliance when I am flying my drone. All right, so now that we're into the drone, the first thing that you want to check is your battery levels. To check it, you just push it once, and this one is all the way, it's been fully charged recently. You don't want to head out on a flight with a battery that's not all the way charged. That's just not safe practice, because your aircraft takes a lot of power to keep up in the air, especially these big ones. Another thing with these batteries is that they tend to release a charge over a given amount of time that you can set in the DJI Go app. They kind of work like a muscle, so if I were to squeeze my hand like this very tightly, over time that's going to loosen up. So that's kind of like the charge. I'm fully charged here, and over time my hand will get tired and let go of that charge. I have this set to a 7-day discharge time, and I found that that works better than the 10-day, I think it is. That's the default setting, because after I complete my flights, I store them in that fashion. I don't charge them up and store them with a full charge. I always charge them the night before I plan to go and fly my drone. Your Inspire 1 comes to you set in a travel mode where the legs and everything are flat. So as I pull this out, you can see that the legs are flat. I'm going to put it over here to the side. You're going to push it once rapidly, and then the second time hold it for 2 seconds. So I push once and push and hold for 2 seconds, and it'll power on. Here's you take your RC controller remote, do the same thing to power that on. All right, so to take your aircraft out of travel mode, you rapidly click this switch on the remote controller up and down 4 times. That will take your drone out of travel mode and put it into landing mode. I do want to highlight one aspect of taking your drone in and out of travel mode on rough surfaces, however. With this rough surface, I'm going to rapidly click this switch up and down 4 times. As the drone is coming out of travel mode, I'm going to lift it up a little bit. I'm going to assist the aircraft up into landing mode. The reason behind that is that these legs pull in. I don't want to put any undue stress on the motor that brings the legs into landing mode, because it's dragging on this rough surface. Now that I'm in landing mode, I'm going to power down my aircraft so I can attach the camera. To power it down, push it once and hold it for 2 seconds, and it will power off. And it doesn't make any noise. It just powers off. The battery, everything's shut down. So to attach my camera, I just push this little switch here, take off the protective cover. You want to keep all dirt, dust, and stuff out of these contact points so you can attach your camera and you don't have any issues while you're in the air. You're going to have to line it up with this line here, and it shows that it's unlocked or locked. Here I have the Zenmue X3 camera. You just take this out of its protective housing, and you just remove the protective cover off the camera as well. And you can see that there's this little line here that you can line up the contact points with the drone. So you just bring it under here like this, in this fashion. I'm going to demonstrate this a little differently in this video. You don't want to do it this way because it's hard to do that, but you just line up this line here and then lock it into place. Then your camera is attached. So you don't want to attach the camera like I did in this video. You want to keep the aircraft flat, put the camera up and in, lock it into place, make sure it's secure before you power it back on. I want to talk about the RC controller here for a minute. I'm not going to talk about every little setting and whatnot on this because I'll leave you to read the manual on that. This video is to get you up and running as quick as possible with your DJI Inspire 1. I would highly recommend at some point you label your thumbsticks. So you can see left yaw, right yaw, reverse, forward, ascend, descend, right roll, left roll. I just got a label maker and put these in place, and it has helped me immensely. Now you have to have eyes on your drone at all times, but there's nothing to say that you could lose contact with the camera at some point. This allows me to visually look at my controller and my drone and make maneuverability decisions without having the camera in place. So if I lose connection with the camera, I can bring my drone back to me and land it safely. So this helps me know which way I can maneuver my drone. So I would highly recommend that you do that. Another thing that I do to kind of keep my cable in place, or keep it readily available at all times, I have a little small lightning to USB, because I have an iPhone. I just attach it with this anchor. It's actually an anchor cable. I'll leave it linked in the description if you want to pick it up. But I literally have this tiny cable here. I Velcro it on to my RC controller, and I can get off and running with it really quickly. One thing that I want to highlight is the connected status to your drone, the aircraft itself, and the battery status. Here you can see it's not connected. The drone will power on and it will connect. So it's showing green status and we're ready to go. All right, moving right along. Before I power on the aircraft, it's time to attach the propellers. With attaching these propellers, which you probably won't encounter because this is an older drone, all of the newer Inspire ones have a different type of propeller attachments. These all match up with, not parallel, but across from each other. So to put these propellers on, you kind of just push them down, lock them into place. And some of them don't fit, like this one doesn't fit on this one. So I need to make sure it goes over here, push it down, and it locks into place with the spring. This is a very important step. Now you want to make sure that your propellers are set in place before you power on the aircraft. Make sure they're not loose or coming off or anything like that. Make sure they're free to rotate before you even power on the aircraft itself. So now that I've made sure that that is done, I'm gonna go ahead and power it on. So I push it once and hold it down for 2 seconds on the second push, and it'll power itself on. Now the drone's gonna go through a check to make sure that the Zenmu X3 camera is attached. It's gonna run through its rotational checks and make sure everything is connected. So after you've made a visual inspection of your aircraft and everything's ready to go, you're going to need to calibrate the location, or the GPS location of your home. So in case you ever lose connection, the return to home will bring it to this exact spot. If you're by yourself like I am here, put your RC controller down on the ground like I've done here, because as soon as you hit calibrate, you're going to have to pick up your drone and physically move it around in circles. So we're gonna go ahead and do that now. So if we hit calibrate, it's gonna ask for the compass. To calibrate the compass, you're gonna hit OK. And then it's gonna say pick up your drone and follow the on-screen instructions. So I'm gonna pick up my drone, I'm gonna spin around until it says OK. Then I'm going to tilt it on its side like this and spin around as well. It's the drone dance. And then my GPS location is set with a little bit of dizziness and motion sickness on my part. One thing before you crank up this aircraft, make sure that your SD card is readable and it's ready to hit record. A good way to do that is just hit the record button and make sure it records 2 or 3 seconds into the SD card before you get up there. I've gotten up in the air before and realized that the SD card was not properly attached, or just wasn't even in the camera itself. This lets me know that it is recording properly, the settings and everything is ready to go. You do need to spend some time auto-calibrating your gimbal. So just click up here in the settings, go to the gimbal settings, and then click gimbal auto-calibrate. And it's going to ask you to begin the process. You're going to say yes. It's going to calibrate your gimbal so it's flush with the horizon. You don't want to get up in the air and realize that your gimbal is off to the side and whatnot, and it's going to ruin your footage. So as the drone runs through its process and auto-calibrating the horizon of your gimbal, you are ready to go. If this is your first time flying your aircraft, it's a large aircraft and you're going to be tempted to just let the app auto take off. I highly recommend against this. Reason why? Because you want to inspect your aircraft while it's on the ground before you initially take off. So never do this. I highly am against this. There have been times where I've hit the auto takeoff and one of my propellers went phew, and my aircraft still tried to attempt to take off and it crashed, and it was just a big no-no. So don't do it. So you may be asking, how do you get spun up to get ready to take off? Well, you just take your two joystick and push them to the sides like that. And now my aircraft is ready to rock and roll. All I have to do is hit ascend. So I can quickly give it a visual inspection before I put this thing into the air, so I'm not putting anybody in danger or anything like that. So with that said, everything looks good. It looks like I'm ready to take off. I'm gonna go ahead and hit the ascend on my RC controller. So I just go ahead, lift up on the RC controller and put it into the air. And my process of flying my drone includes a bunch of inspection elements before I ever take a flight. So at this point I can inspect if it's ascending properly, descending properly, has a good right roll and a left roll, as well as moving forward or backwards and left and right yaws. Now that I know that it's ready to go, I can go ahead and raise my landing gear by clicking this little switch, then looking at the drone, making sure my landing gear is raising up properly, and I can hit record and enjoy my flight. All right, I'm gonna give you a lesson learned from my perspective. As you can see, the green lights on the drone should always be facing me. And this is just my tip to you as you're learning, because I can see the green lights. I know every direction or every adjustment that I make on the RC controller are gonna actually represent that movement. So if I move left, it's going to be left. If I move right, it's going to be right. Now, if I see the red lights on the drone, everything is in reverse. And this can get you in trouble if you're barely learning how to fly this drone. The red lights, you don't want to see them when you're making like precise movements with your aircraft. Now, I want to kind of discuss an advanced landing tip with you. And I would highly recommend that you practice this a couple of times in like an open area and be very, very careful. And I also want to add a disclaimer here. If you hurt yourself because you tried this because of this video, it's not my fault. Now, you may take your drone off in some sort of like deep grass or something like that, or dirt, or you're on a boat or something like that, and it's hard to land on a stationary spot. So now that I have my RC controller, I have it in my right hand, and I can go ahead and land this thing in my hand. Now, I want to highlight something that is very, very important. You do not want to attempt this with the landing gear in the landing mode. You want to make sure your landing gear is up. The reason why you want to have your landing gear up when you attempt this like catch landing with the DJI Inspire 1 is that your propellers are mighty close to your hand if you grab it on the battery, because this is where you want to grab it, on the sensors of the aircraft on the battery. But if the landing gear is down, it could really cause some damage to your eye or something like that. You do not want that. So again, I'm gonna preface this part, well, I've already done it, but I wanna say be very, very, very careful trying to do this. You wanna have your landing gear up, bring it down, catch it on the battery, make sure your hands are on the sensor. As soon as it hits your hand, descend the aircraft and the landing gear will come down automatically. Well, before we close this video, I want to say that I am not Part 107 certified yet. I plan on getting that here very soon. Now you're out there flying your aircraft, make sure you fly responsibly, practice a lot, and hone your skill for flying your drone, and be responsible with it. If you have comments, questions, concerns, feel free to drop them in the comment section. I will get back to you. Well, that about does it for me in this one. If you liked this video and you learned something, please feel free to give me a thumbs up. If you didn't, you know what to do. Thank you for taking the time to watch. I'm Tomas, and I will catch you in the next one.